goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
The Goodness of God, Session 5. I heard a statement the other day which really spoke to me, and it said, the greatest vacuum in the consciousness of humanity is the goodness of God. So what I think it's saying is that if people only knew how good God was, they would love him, they'd be obedient to him, they'd trust him. Seeing God as good really changes the perspective we have on life. Romans 12:2 says this, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve the will of God, his good, pleasing and perfect will." So it's God's will that is good, it is pleasing, it is perfect. But if we want to see that, then we have to change our way of thinking. Think differently about God. And that's changed by knowing his love for us as an individual, not just in our head. Knowing this enables us to see things in a different light. Now, years ago, John's wife and my best friend died from a nasty cancer. There were literally hundreds of people praying for her, but she was not healed. It wasn't a good time, and you might question, well, how is God good in that? There are many months of watching someone you love suffer. There's the grief of losing them. But out of the experience, I have to say that I was more convinced of the goodness of God. And I can't really explain why. The only thing I can say is I learned that he was there as support, as comfort, as strength. We were never alone. And that's the best I can come up with to explain this growing sense of the goodness of God through a difficult time. When we go through hard times, they're often the times that we learn new skills, new understandings. And these may later become something that is really a blessing to us in some new way that we've never thought of. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." To delight in the Lord is to see him as good and to have pleasure to be with him. When we see God this way, it says we will find that he gives us the desires of our heart. And immediately someone will say, what if my heart desires to harm someone? Well, if we delight in God, we will not delight to harm somebody. Our desires are going to be in line with his will. But this doesn't mean that God makes us conform to his will. It comes from our heart. It comes from our choice. A loving father who had a child who perhaps had a dream of becoming a musician would encourage that, enable them to learn an instrument and encourage them to practice and become a musician. They wouldn't stop them from playing anything and say, no, you're never going to do that. God's put abilities within us. They're there for a purpose. And he encourages us to use those natural abilities and to follow the dreams that we have. The only time when he would say no to a dream is when it will contravene his purpose for our life. So it's an understanding God doesn't dictate to us what we need to do day by day. He wants us to dream. He wants us to give our desires, and he will give us the desires of our hearts. Someone put it, if we dial into what's on God's heart, he'll dial into what's on ours. He's not a demanding tyrant. He's a loving father who wants only the best for us.
Call out your name in the darkness and watch as your glory unfolds. For there is no measure, no end to the power you hold. Justice and truth are your virtues, with many to us for our words. No mind contains the splendor of all that you are. Our God, words at all. I will sing in the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness